So, I mentioned the purpose of my video is in case something happens to me, the cops have a starting point, but also to potentially help others who are in the same boat or similar. So, the question is, how do you end up with a narcissistic or psychopathic or someone on the dark triad and stay there for years and then end up totally alone, isolated, and continually stalked? So we'll start with my childhood. So I was born to young parents. My mother was 19. My dad was 20. They came from abusive backgrounds, different ones. My dad was physically abused and my mother was mentally abused. They were both very damaged people. And then I came into the world. So my life started with seeing a lot of domestic violence. My dad was very violent. And my mother, I now look back, was also very manipulative to him. There is no justification for domestic violence. But my mom pushed buttons. And it was horrible to see them fight. But I wasn't allowed to even cry about it when it happened. I was told to shut up. Growing up, when my parents would take me to their friends' homes, and this was in the 70s, I'm old, I had to sit in one place and not move. I was not allowed to play with the children of their friends. I was completely isolated. And of course, when no one was looking, those kids were laughing. You got to sit there. They played really loud music. There was drug use. Yeah. And I was isolated. Like, I wasn't allowed to have peers. I wasn't allowed to play. A lot of fights. As far as how they treated me, my father was very physically abusive and a screamer, so verbal abuse. And there's no barometer. I've heard people tell stories about, well, I remember this one time I got in real trouble. I had to pick the switch, and they remember what they did. I can't tell you that. The beatings and the screaming happened for anything from spilling milk to drawing on the walls. It didn't matter. The abuse, the punishment was the same. Screaming and beating. And what would tend to happen is I'd get in trouble with mom. She would be firm and then send me to my room. Wait till your dad gets home. And this is after she talked to me. And it felt like, as a child, hours. And looking back, I probably was. And then dad would come home. He would beat the crap out of me, send me to my room, and then come back and I'd get screamed at in a lecture and then back to my room. And again, it didn't matter. One time, so we lived on a highway at one point. We moved around a lot. My parents were not stable. But the one home we lived in, I think it was 1976, 77. We lived on a highway. And so the deal was I got dropped off by the bus and it was across the street from our home, which was very busy traffic-wise. And I had to stand outside where the bus stop was. And when the bus dropped me off, my mom would come out and she would look both ways and then motion me to come across. Well, one day we got out early. And so the bus dropped me off and I stood there and I waited and I waited and I waited. And my friends were like, why are you still waiting here? I'm like, I don't know. And then I realized, well, we got out early. Mom forgot. So my one friend said, come on over to my house. You can call your mom. So I went there and the friend's mother's like, yeah, I'll call your home. So I called. Now, here's the problem. I think I dialed the wrong number. The phone just rang and rang and rang. Or it's possible my mom just wasn't available to answer the phone for whatever reason. But I couldn't get a hold of her. And so my friend's mom said, we'll just play here for a while and then I'll walk you down at the normal time. So I was playing with my friends. It was one of the few times I got to play with people. It was kind of cool. I'm like, oh, I get to play with some friends. Next thing I know, I see my mom huffing and puffing down. She sees me and she is pissed. She grabs me, lures me, pulls me all the way home. We get there and she's screaming at me, and all I know is I remember her saying, you made me look bad. And it was said in a way that she thought I did it on purpose. She swatted me, sent me away till your dad gets home. And so this, at the earliest, would have been right after school. And of course, my dad worked a 9-to-5 job. So I waited I've already been screamed at. I've already been spanked. Dad gets home. And he grabbed me and pulled me into the living room. And he had a white desk and it had this laminate like stuff on there. And he peels off this strip of laminate and pulled down my pants and beat the shit out of me. And then screamed at what I had done to his wife, my mother. And I had welts. And I know, especially those that have been physically abused and you've had black eyes, broken ribs. Oh, I get it. Maybe that doesn't. But it was horrible. And I was trying to fathom what I did wrong. Like, what could I have done? And I'm trying to figure out in my head what I did that was wrong. Mom didn't come and let me cross the street. Mom wasn't answering the phone. What was I supposed to do? But my parents told me I was lying. That I did this to make Mom look bad. One Christmas, I opened presents excitedly, and my dad screamed at me that I was a mercenary. And when he screamed that, this would have been, had to have been 75. I don't know. I was 5. I didn't know what mercenary meant, but I knew by his tone it was bad and had to do with how I opened the presents. So the next holiday, which would have been my birthday, I tried to be very controlled and prim. And my dad screamed at me that I wasn't showing appreciation and I was a martyr. And again, I didn't know what that meant, but it was bad. I never knew how to behave. I never did anything right, but I desperately wanted to be right. I didn't want to get in trouble. I wanted my parents to love me, but I was never good enough. I wasn't good enough to play with my friends. I had to sit still and in place. I couldn't be too excited about presents, but I had to show some excitement. If I ran late, I guess I should just stand there at the bus stop and wait until someone showed up. I didn't know, and I always felt like a screw up. My dad was born with a disability that resulted in hip dysplasia, and he was born in 50, so they didn't correct it in a way they would now. So his one leg was withered, atrophied, and he had a lot of pain. And at 4 and 5, I had to help him get his shoe and sock on the one foot because he couldn't bend down, and I never did it right. I had to make him his peanut butter sandwiches. I either put too much peanut butter on it or not enough. And I desperately wanted to care for him. I loved him. Of course, he's my dad. And in his situation with his disability that involved providing care. And I was never good enough. So that's how I grew up. I was a bad kid. My parents finally had children, my brother and sister, and we'll talk about that in the next chapter.